Okay, and welcome back. Time to talk to a friend of ours, Betty Martini. Dr. Betty Martini has done more over the years single-handedly to fight the aspartame, deadly, carcinogenic, it's a neurotoxin. We know the story. Horror of aspartame. Betty has traveled much of the world. She has contributed with countless articles, essays, news stories, press releases, emails. She has taken, God only knows how many tens of thousands of phone calls and so forth to try to make this issue widely available to as many people as possible. People who need to know what they're doing. I remember again recently I was in a movie theater and saw a commercial, a very big budget commercial obviously, for Diet Coke. Couldn't believe it. People just are amazed. They spend a fortune promoting these things, and I still don't understand why. Regular Coke tastes better. Ever had a can of a diet soft drink, for example, and how it didn't taste good one time and tasted great the next? Well, when it tasted lousy, it had been at room temperature for probably over 20 minutes. That's when aspartame breaks down into its 4 toxic sub-ingredients. I mean, as a whole, it's one thing, but when it breaks down to its individual parts, all of which are toxic, you got a problem. Not only do you not have a sweet soft drink, but you've got, again, a carcinogenic neurotoxin coursing through your veins, which does irreparable damage to your body. It's just really that simple, that insidious, and that evil. Hi, Betty. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm just delighted to be back with you.
Yeah. All right. Some people say, well, I only have a diet soft drink once in a while. Well, before we get to that, let me just ask you, how many products approximately contain aspartame now? Do we know?
The last article I saw on it was 14,000. And I did a radio program with Dr. Roberts about 3 years ago when he said it was way over 10,000 at that point. A lot of people say 6,000, but they keep adding it, not to mention the fact that it's in a lot of things unlabeled.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And if they can put it in sugar without having to declare it in sugar, in baked goods, for example, which they can, I think they can put up to 10% of aspartame without even labeling it, maybe more. We don't know. We just don't know. So how much aspartame is safe? People say, I only have a diet drink once in a while. I like it, though. I like sugar-free gum. That's one of the most insidious forms of it. How much is safe, Betty?
Well, I'm asked that so often. I wrote an article about it called No Safe Dose of Aspartame. That's the cover story for the Health Freedom News.
Yeah.
And because if you look at the records, the FDA said there's no safe dose. The chief toxicologist, Dr. Adrian Gross, told Congress, you can't even set an allowable daily dose for it because it causes cancer. It violates the Delaney Amendment. And one of the things, that I told the European Food Safety Authority, because they're doing a review, I said when you have almost 100% of independent scientific peer-reviewed studies showing it's unsafe, how do you say it's safe? Of course, half their committee has a conflict of interest, and that's been brought out in many articles. So the point of it is it was approved by politics, it's kept on the market by politics, and, all this false information. And because this is September is Aspartame Awareness Month, we decided to do something different. We've had people write to their congressmen, just like I have, and their senators, and explain, here's the problem, here's the facts, and the FDA answers letters with information that is absolutely not true. And then, if you try to work within the law of, like, citizens' petitions for a ban, they simply ignore it. And even though they say it's 180 days, what they've done since I filed one 10 years ago is sent me 2 letters telling me that they have more important things to do. And I have the letters. In fact, I ought to put them on web. But it shows you that they are not going to answer. And the reason is because all of their records show it's a poison, and aspartame is cumulative. There is no safe dose. And, interestingly, I saw somebody in the airport gave one of this magazine, and I said, because of the obesity epidemic, and aspartame causes it, and I see you're drinking, a Diet Coke. When did you start using Diet Coke? He says, well, I was not overweight. I just decided I would use it to make sure I didn't gain weight. And all of a sudden, here I'm 350 pounds. I
Wow.
said, did you ever put two things like this together?
Wow.
And, when he read the article, he was pretty outraged. And, of course, I went on to Costa Rica and just, talked to a lot of doctors down there and gave these magazines to many of them. One cardiologist says, after I told him it caused sudden cardiac death, he stopped, read the article, and he says, but this is outrageous. This is a poison. I says, well, if you ask someone is a neurotoxin a poison, they would say yes. If you asked them if an excitotoxin is a poison, they would tell you yes. If you asked them if methanol was a poison, they'd tell you yes. If you asked them if a brain tumor agent was poison, they would tell you yes. Put those four things together, and aspartame, and the FDA will tell you, that it's safe.
It's a harmless artificial sweetener. That's what they tell you.
Yeah.
But they know, and we know they know, because the scientists working on the original project all talked about it. It's not a secret. This is one of the biggest mass poisonings in history. We've got fluoride in the drinking water. We have aspartame in, maybe 20,000 products now. We don't know. It's mass toxification of the American and the world public. This stuff goes all over the place.
I know, and do you know that Dr. James Bowen told the FDA that 25 years ago, that it was mass poisoning of the American public in more than 70-plus countries of the world. Now, today it's over 100, but we got a real big problem with Codex because, if it's not banned by Codex,
right,
then it will be in countries where it's never been approved. And just everywhere you go, everywhere that I travel, and all the people I talk to in Costa Rica, and they would say, oh, I know somebody who uses it all day, and she constantly has seizures. And, every time you get somebody off, seizures stop. And if they have headaches or joint pain. And I said, it's so easily provable. Just get off of it. I recently wrote something about Ann Romney when I found out that she had MS. And of all the diseases that it causes, that's just one that it seems to be constant. And, gave the different reports by doctors, how it mimics it and how it also can precipitate it. And that all you have to do is get off and see what happens. Like Corey Brackett, who did the movie Sweet Misery, is that she couldn't talk or walk hardly. And all she did was get off of it, and she walked out of her wheelchair. I never will forget the time she called because she said, a movie needs to be made about this. She said, how long I was in a wheelchair and in that condition? I said, tell me about it. She said, honey, I own the film company. And that's how Sweet Misery was made.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, very good. Wow. What a story. Well, again, it's something that you see everywhere. You've been to a dentist office lately. If you have children, you take them to the dentist office. What does the dentist tell them to do? Chew this gum. Chew sugar-free gum. He'll tell you the same thing, too. But they push this stuff on children. It is addictive. It's like MSG. It is an excitotoxin. It is an addictive property.
And, there was just another new study on dietary excitotoxins linked with fibromyalgia and irritable bowel syndrome. Of course, we've known that for years, but and they're talking about aspartame and MSG. They're like sisters. But even years ago at the University of Florida, they did a study, and the study showed that when they got off aspartame and MSG, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome disappears. And so, no matter how many studies you do, the FDA just ignores it completely. And, I may have told you, they called me, and when I said people are sick and dying all over the world, he said, so what? We need to depopulate.
Right.
There's your compassionate.
There it is. There it is. All right, hold on just a second. We'll come right back with Betty Martini right after this. Back with Betty Martini, talking about aspartame, sweet misery, and worse. It's deadly. All right, so how much progress have we made? Ajinomoto is still cranking the poison out. It's going into more and more products around the world all the time. What's the good news?
Well, the good news is that Ajinomoto just put out a press release, or actually it was Navigator, one of those beverage companies, telling that they have admitted that their sales are going down rapidly. So, and I think the press release is on our website, www.mpwhi.com. Also, EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, had done a review and tried to say it was safe, and Parliament really got after them and said that they that how we don't understand how you say this is safe, since there's been a study in Denmark with 60,000 women showing that aspartame can jump preterm birth 78%, and then there was one that shows that it causes strokes and heart attacks. One after that shows that it raises fasting blood sugar. We think you better go back and do it again. So they didn't want to, but they have, and now they've extended it for some reason, and they have put out a call to for data on ketopirazine, which is the brain tumor agent that aspartame breaks down. And so, we wonder about that. And there was a study by Dr. Nunn, and it really was never published, and I have a feeling the reason is that we got on, the hills where they were doing the study, they're stationary, that it was basically, as Dr. John Oney said about brain tumors. And so it was never published because then that was taken off the report, and nobody could find it anymore. So I put out what it actually showed, and nobody's been able to really get any published report on it. I doubt if it will ever be published, except what they say maybe on a website. So, things are happening in Europe, as well, and it is absolutely getting around the world. Even in Costa Rica, where they talk Spanish, so many people, told me that that's all we hear is how bad it is. Big problem is getting people off because of the addiction, and that, terrible methanol that's classified as a narcotic causes chronic methanol poisoning. This affects the dopamine system of the brain and causes the addiction.
So you really can't just walk away from it cold turkey. No. It's very hard to do.
That's, even physicians, I have even debated physicians. I remember when I said, I won. And he says, you did? I said, yes. I said, I've shown you everything to show that it's not safe. Now, show me why it's safe. And he says, but I want to use it. And even recently, someone I know saw a doctor that was a aspartame addict. And I said, if you're an addict, well, how are you going to tell your patients to get off it when it causes kidney cancer, interstitial cystitis, and all these urological problems. Are you going to let your patients use it and get these diseases, you know?
That's right.
He says, don't take away my aspartame. I'm a sick man. I said, Doctor,
Wow.
why do you think you're sick?
Wow.
You know, that's
Wow.
the problem. That's the problem. They're so addicted. And you know what Dr. Bill Deagle says? It's like talking to somebody who's had a lobotomy because, you know, it affects the frontal lobes first. And that causes that problem. You know, they just don't really care.
Right.
So
Amazing. About as insidious as it gets. Just terrible. It's like nicotine, but worse. Nicotine is the most addictive property on the planet. But all these things that are addictive have their own configurations. They do their own things to the body. And people just have no idea what they're being used for. They never will. This stuff is in everything. 14,000 products, maybe 20. We don't know. It's in baked goods, and it doesn't even show up on the label. What is the label requirement now, Betty, if much of anything anymore?
Well, that's the problem. Trying to get that out of the FDA. The law is that it must be labeled, and that, you know, because of the PKU warning for phenylketonuria that cannot metabolize phenylalanine. However, at 50% of the molecule, nobody can. But twice, Mr. Stuart Pate of the National Yogurt Association has petitioned the FDA to allow it in dairy products and yogurt without labeling. And they refused to answer, even under Freedom of Information, if they allowed that.
Wow.
And, you know, I went to Chicago to talk to Jerome Bressler, who wrote the famous Bressler Report. He wanted me to get these 2 studies that they left off. And that's another thing. But he says, Betty, this is against the law. They cannot do it. And I said, well, yeah, it's against the law for the FDA to remove those 2 studies from your report, but they did it, didn't they? And an interesting thing is Dr. Woodrow Monte, just wrote this new book called While Science Sleeps. And he was able to get 4 studies. We got the 2 that Jerome Bressler wanted me to get. It took 8 years. All these are teratology reports showing aspartame causes birth defects. And the FDA has admitted to him, to Dr. Monte, you know, that they made a deal with G.D. Searle not to allow the public that information. And so they sealed and hid all those studies, all these, you know, women using it during pregnancy and having autistic children. You wonder why you have an autistic epidemic. That's it. And he explains that in the book very, very well.
Well, whatever aspartame doesn't nail by way of creating autism, vaccines will.
Absolutely.
Do the rest of it.
Look at the combination.
Yeah. Oh, no, don't.
Put all that together, and it's just like aspartame interacts with your drugs and vaccines.
I know. It's amazing.
You know, how do they even have a chance?
I don't know.
You're absolutely right.
I don't know, Betty. Thanks so much for being here. You're very busy. You're off on another trip, I guess. And let me know when you get back. When are you leaving?
On the 24th
Okay.
of October.
Yeah, and where are you going?
Well, I'm going to England, and then I've got an interview in France. And
well, maybe we can do something live when you're over there. That'd be fun. So if you want to, just let me know.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks, Betty. We salute you for all the years and all the dedication.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for all the help you do.
Always happy to. You take care.